Thank you, Mr. Aiyar. Well, I have two very short opening questions to kind of, pop up in your mind without any preparation. So the first thing is, when you think of India today, in the eyes of the world, what is the first thing that comes to your mind?
What comes to your mind is that this is a rising power, still a very small power, still a very poor country, but a rising power in technological terms, in terms of its ability to impact the rest of the world, the ability to act as a counter to China as far as the West is concerned. So there are strategic and economic angles to it, especially if you look forward. If you see that India is on a path of is currently the fastest growing major economy, and if you say where is it going to be 30, 40 years ago, that begins to look like an impressive thing to look forward. A poor country, but population of 1.4 billion. And just as China was a poor country with the same kind of population, which in effect has become superpower today. So there is speculation that India too will reach the same position some decades hence, not
Oh,
tomorrow, day after.
okay. Okay. Now, if you had to just think of one or two, the words, when you think of Mr. Modi as a prime minister for the last 10 years, what are the one or two words that come to your mind out of the flash?
Authoritarian, Hindu, uh, popular, um, clever, effective, disciplinarian.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. How would you evaluate the economic performance of India and its international standing during the 10-year tenure of the UPA government from 2004 to 2014?
Yes, well, if you look at what the opposition party is like, especially Congress party is saying, it will say 10 years of Modi rule, GDP growth has been slower than 10 years of UPA rule, which is correct. But on the other hand, Modi's first term was quite fast growing. Second term, if you had COVID, Ukraine, and one El Nino year, the combination has been very, very adverse circumstances. So the big achievement of Modi is not faster growth. It is the achievement of complete solidity of the Indian economy in the face of very, very fierce global winds. Larry Summers, the American economist, said in 2023, the world is on fire. The combined effect of COVID, Ukraine, and El Nino was such that 70 countries were in desperate trouble and had gone to the IMF for help. India's three neighbors, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, all with IMF. But in India, there is no sense of any fire, no sense of any storm. It appears to be complete stability. I mean, the contrast is remarkable. If you go back 10 years earlier, there was what was called the taper tantrum. The Fed in 2014 was planning to suddenly increase its interest rates. Because of that, there was an enormous outflow of dollars from all emerging markets back to the safe haven of the USA. Within that, it destroyed India. The exchange rate went from 55 to 65 within a few weeks. Mr. Raghuram Rajan was called from America to come and save the economy, and he set up some special fund to try and attract NRI money and tame those winds. So, there was a storm in 2014, and India was regarded as one of the fragile five, and it fell like the other fragile five. 2024, suddenly the same India is completely rock solid, so rock solid that people are not even aware that there is a global problem. So the quality of the improvement is something that has been very impressive. To be growing at 7% in these conditions is extraordinary. To grow at 7% when the UPA was in power was less extraordinary because China had pulled the whole global economy along so much that growing at 7% was not so difficult. But to do so in current circumstances is quite impressive. And so, while India is still a poor country, the world has taken note that here is a country with potential. I think one would have to add that there was individual technological feats like India landing the moon landing Russia and India had two moon landings days after one another. The Russian thing crashed, India landed successfully. I mean, the notion, therefore, that India is competing with the former superpower, I think that again is something that goes home that yes, poor country, but technologically, it is now become a power to reckon with.
Mhm, mhm. Thank you, sir. So, particularly now that you are in the US, how do you think India has navigated its relationship with the West, particularly with the United States, under the last 10 years of Modi government?
Modi has attempted to strengthen external relations with a large number of countries. The emphasis of foreign policy is multipolarity. It is not of, just going for the American pole. It is that we must have a large number of multiple poles of power, of which India will in due course become one. Not yet, but India therefore is aiming not just to align with the USA, but to have a separate status of its own international. Within that, the relations with the Quad have notably strengthened. Earlier on, it was a very vague arrangement. Now it is unquestionably a military thing. And therefore, India has now become a military semi-partner, not a full partner. It's a partner, it is not an ally. It is not an ally as was shown in the case of Ukraine. So India is a partner and an important partner for the USA. But at the same time, Mr. Modi has gone out of his way to say he does not want a Cold War with China of the kind that used to be there with the Soviet Union. So he's not aligning with the West or the USA against. He says we have our own things, and I think one of his top priorities is we must not provoke a war with China. There is a border that is very volatile. Many things have gone wrong. And he's very, very clear you must not provoke a war. But at the same time, we are mending our defenses with people across. He has had a very major initiatives, for instance, with Saudi Arabia and the UAE. So with the Muslim world, he has got a very major initiative. With China, he has made more visits than any other prime minister. And he says that he wants to keep the tensions under control. With the United States, yes, he has strengthened the relations. The military relationship has definitely strengthened. Many more arms are being got from the USA. But please remember, we absolutely insisted on getting missiles from the USSR, from Russia, the SS-40 missiles.
Yes.
And Americans said that we will cut off aid. They held firm. So in other words, there is no question of India just becoming aligned with the USA. It is rising as a power on its own. It is trying to negotiate improved relations with a large number of countries, including the USA, but by no means exclusive.
Okay. Now, obviously, you seem to be pretty impressed with the way the Modi government has managed the contradictions and the challenges that the global landscape has thrown at the government in the last 10 years. Where do you think this acumen comes from? Because when he became prime minister, the biggest question was, would he be able to, look eye to eye with the world leaders and take India to new heights? That was the question.
Modi has surprised many people on many fronts. And the surprises have worked both ways. There are very serious contradictions in what he says. On the one hand, he keeps emphasizing that interdependence is very important. We cannot be isolationist. Then he keeps saying we have something called Atmanirbhar, which looks the opposite of interdependence. It looks like self-sufficiency. He keeps stressing that so much. He keeps talking about this PLI, this attempt to kickstart a large number of 14 sectors. He says special things to revive them. And yet, say at the same time, while it appears to be part of Atmanirbhar that Indian companies will, it appears that the main wooing is to get foreign companies in. Again, the contradictions are very, very good. What exactly are you trying to do? And the answer is he's playing different lobbies. I think himself is much more of a liberalizer than the party itself. But the RSS is not a liberalizer. The Swadeshi Jagran Manch, you can tell from its name, Swadeshi Jagran Manch means a domestic movement for domestic. So that's an important part. So he is playing off these various lobbies in order to achieve this particular position. He has had an emphasis on governance and on improving digitization and the quality of governance. I think his cleverest thing is he took the best ideas of the Congress party and made them his own. The real result, I mean, if you look at it, they talk about the jam unity, about the Jan Dhan Yojana, banking for all, the Aadhaar, the mobile banking. All of these were basically for 10 years nurtured under the UPA. He took all of those and made them even better. In fact, he has left Rahul Gandhi without an agenda. What does Rahul Gandhi claim that he wants to do? Because Modi has taken over his best ideas and done them even better. So these are the various clever ways in which Modi has gone forward. So he has an open mind, enough of an open mind to take over the UPA, the very same policies that he criticized when he was in opposition. He has taken over and made them even better. So these have been his major strengths. Uh, he has been helped by various factors in his first term. He came to power when the price of oil was $115. Within 6 months, the price was down to $45. So his first 5 years, he was very greatly helped by this uh, great improvement in the global scenario. But his second 5 years, he's had to deal with COVID, Ukraine, and El Nino. So these have been very difficult years. So he sailed through the easy years and he's made good progress in the difficult years. And the most important thing, therefore, has been this time. Although you may say average growth rate is slower, but to have got through such difficult conditions in such a manner as he has, the world has taken up and taken notice, and quite rightly so.
Okay. So, is it fair to say then that the UPA government had great ideas, but either because of the coalition politics or lack of imagination, they fell short of implementation, and that's where Modi filled the gap? Is that a fair assessment?
Uh, Approximately, they had very serious problems of a series of scams that came up. The second thing is that while the UPA was in power, again, the global thing was good in terms of growth, but agricultural prices absolutely skyrocketed globally between 2008 and 2014. And in India, this resulted in double-digit inflation. So, inflation in the second phase of UPA was extremely high, combined with the scams. So this is what brought them down. So these circumstances, Modi has been lucky, you can say, that global agricultural prices or commodity prices in general have been favorable. So he has faced a helpful climate from that point of view. But as I said, the most important thing has been his ability to spot which were the best ideas of the opposition, take them, and without doubt, his execution has been superior. No doubt about it. So something like Indira Awas Yojana, which is free housing for the poor. Indira Gandhi's idea 30 years ago, but the rate of building has gone up 10 times under Modi. So it actually becomes an impact instead of just being a program. And again, the leakages that used to take place. Rajiv Gandhi, when he was prime minister, was famous for making a statement that when you give out 1 rupee to help the poor, 15 paisa gets through and 85 is wasted. Today
Yes.
it's the other way around. Today probably 15 paisa is wasted and 85 paisa gets through. So there are still leakages. We are not in nirvana. This is not a perfect society. But there is a huge improvement in execution.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. I think you have answered my next question in a way, in terms of where India is heading. I think my next question is particularly in relation to China, Mr. Iyer. Are we being used as a pawn, in the superpower rivalry, and being used as a counterweight to China?
Sir, India is attempting to be a superpower itself. I mean, all this talk of being a pawn. Manipulation the foreign policy is about manipulation. So others will attempt to manipulate India and India will attempt to manipulate others. So, manipulation is part of the game, but we are no pawn. We are a potential superpower. Within that, we are rearranging our overall global attitudes. We were definitely not with the USA earlier. The Quad, for instance, earlier on was not seen as something that should be militarized in India. India was not interested in joining a militarized Quad. Now it has done so. And it has done so on its own. Not because somebody manipulated India, but we have decided that we are now powerful enough to militarize the Quad without antagonizing China too much. There is an antagonism already, and China has been very unhappy with India militarizing the Quad. But this is a balance being played. So, on the other, on one hand, India wants to send a message to China: okay, look, if you think you're going to play games on the border, please remember we have various ways of retaliating. We can stop Chinese from sending their equipment. We can stop Chinese companies which are wanting to come into India from coming into India. We can militarize the Quad. We can do various other things. At the same time, not wanting to raise the temperature on the border. Sir, Rahul Gandhi claims that we have lost 3,000 square kilometers in Ladakh to the Chinese in the last 5 years. I myself asked the army chief, is this true? And the army chief simply said, I refuse to answer that question. And when I say I refuse to answer that question, it's in fact an answer. What he has said. So
Yes.
despite the loss of this territory, Modi refuses to raise the temperature. So on the one hand, he's sending various messages to China, okay, we are not going to put up with this nonsense. We will not allow you to just go to do this without any reaction from all. But the reaction is very calibrated. We don't want to create a crisis.
Okay, but isn't that, sir, a bit of a contradiction in terms of how the critics try to characterize Mr. Modi's as a strong man? When there is an election, he will launch a strike on Balakot or whatever. There is an image that is being built up, and even an attempt to kind of equate him with Putin and Erdogan and so on. But on the other hand, he is really not, ruffle the feathers, so to say, with China. He has been extremely cautious, extremely restrained. So wouldn't that be a kind of contradiction?
There's no contradiction. When you compare yourself with Pakistan, you can say, I am a lion. When you look at China, can you say, I am a lion? No. You say, no. We want to have good relations. We have certain problems. So as I said, it's very, there is no contradiction. Without doubt, he has been very tough with Pakistan relative to his predecessors. He has not been tough with China. As I said, he has allowed them to, in fact, take away enormous quantities of Indian land. And basically, he claims formally that there has been no loss of land. And anybody in the military will tell you that is untrue. So there is a problem. On top of that, I must add that in the case of Arunachal Pradesh, China now in every publication calls it South Tibet. And as part of Tibet claims that this is part of, historically their claims are quite strong. Tawang Monastery was always a stronghold of the Dalai Lama. One way or the other, it was not ruled by bureaucrats from British India or even from Indian India in 1947. So China is wanting to assert itself. It believes it's the world superpower and that, its neighbors should behave appropriately to the world's superpower. And so there is going to be problem in the case of Arunachal Pradesh and Ladakh. That problem is not going to go away. And India needs to tread warily. In 1962, Nehru said, we will throw out the Chinese. And look what happened to it. Modi is not going to repeat that same mistake. So you can be very tough and, you can doubt like a lion when it comes to Pakistan. But when you talk to China, you discreetly play your card saying that, if in fact the guy is going to take up 3,000 square kilometers, I will have to live with it.
Okay. All right. But at the end of the day, money talks. I mean, if you look at the unproportional or disproportionate influence that Middle East has got, it's basically the oil money, that's attracting the world. So if India were to effectively, kind of be a competitor to China, it has got to bridge that economic gap. So, in what way you think India can try to wean the world away from China, and for example, iPhone production coming into India and so on. So, what are the things that India need to do in order to bridge the economic gap with China?
The economic gap between China and India is so huge. It will not be bridged in my lifetime or my son's lifetime. There, it is almost 500% of India's per capita. It's that far. So you do not bridge that gap in a few years. It takes a very long time. It may happen at some point of time, but that is not the kind of scenario we should be worrying about. The whole point is that China, while still only a lower middle income country, had already become globally important. India too also. I mean, we are, according to some data, actually poorer than Bangladesh. Please, let's be clear. Let's be clear that, we are not competing with China. We are not in that league. We are far, far poorer, and we will not get to China's size for a long time. But just as China had become a power to cope with when its per capita income was no more than $5,000, India too. I mean, you could say, let's get to $5,000, and that particular point, we can be a global power to reckon with, not a superpower by any means, not a rich country by any means, but we will be competing. Without doubt, we will be far below China, as I said, for a very long time.
Okay. You said that in the first 5 years, the circumstances were favorable to the Modi government as compared to the last 5 years of the UPA government. But then, when you look at the last 5 years of the Modi government, you have very correctly pointed out that there have been a lot of headwinds that Modi has effectively shielded India from. One being the oil crisis that has eventuated because of the war with Ukraine. So, what India is doing with the oil crisis by buying it from Russia and even processing it and selling it back to the West? Do you think it's a very shrewd economic move? What's your assessment there?
Everybody is doing it. Please let us not pretend that we are the only people buying Russian oil. The truth is that, once oil leaves the shores of Russia, who knows from which tanker to which tanker it's transferred? Nobody knows. Sir, how do you think Iran has been selling its oil all these years in the face of sanctions? Has the Iranian oil economy collapsed? It has not collapsed. So, it is not difficult to evade sanctions. And please let me be blunt. We have been buying Iranian oil for so long. What is the problem in buying some Russian oil also? How do the sanctions matter? So, I mean, we are doing it, everybody is doing it. We were open enough to say from the start, why will we not do it? And I think that was important. I mean, when the sanctions were put, India could say, okay, United States put sanctions. Were we consulted on what the sanctions should be? Were we consulted on how the burden of those sanctions should be shared? The United States is a net oil exporter, so it is not worried. But what about countries that were very large net importers? So the question is, the United States does not suffer as a result of the sanctions, but a country like India does. So was there any discussion on sharing the burden? There was none. So, okay, you put your sanctions, but we will look after our own national interests. And in the case of Iran, we didn't say this openly. In the case of Iran, we didn't say, no, one way or the other, we are going to get it. I mean, I don't know whether you are aware of it, but for a large number of years, the biggest Indian export destination was United Arab Emirates. And you might have said, good heavens, what on earth are we exporting to United Arab Emirates on such a massive thing that's become number one? And the answer is that we were exporting everything in order to re-export from UAE to Iran and Pakistan. So in order to, because direct exports to Pakistan and Iran had various political problems, you did it via the UAE. So as I said, there is nothing new about evading sanctions of various kinds. It happened before, and it has happened. The big difference is that we said on this particular case, we do not agree with these sanctions. Therefore, we shall buy at whatever price is most advantageous for our national interest.
Okay. All right. So finally, there is no doubt that the electoral success that Mr. Modi has had has been phenomenal, and he is poised to win the next term again, barring exceptions. And one of the reasons for his electoral success has been the perception in the minds of the Indians that under the Modi government, the international standing of India has tremendously improved, and he has made the country proud. So that's been one of the perceptions and then the claims made. So what's your assessment on that?
It is certainly the claim that is made, whether or not this is the key factor. I mean, who can tell? What is clear is that Modi is personally seen as having led India forward into an era of prosperity and of Hindu saffronization. The biggest event of the year has been the Ram Temple inauguration. The kind of TV audiences never seen before. And this is not happened before in 50 years or in 75 years of Indian independence. That what is the idea is a land of 10,000 temples? What is new about this world? And is there anything extraordinary about the architecture? Nothing very extraordinary. If you ask me, many other temples in India are far more beautiful, far better to look at. Secondly, I mean, for places of pilgrimage and so on, yeah, people go to various places. But to say this is the birthplace of Ram, I mean, everybody knows that's a fiction. I mean, who on earth knows that, Ram was actually born at that very spot, as was claimed? So it's a modern fiction being given a modern sheen. Uh, Nevertheless, Modi has managed to make a huge deal out of that. So is it that? So while he is popular, what are the sources of his popularity? Is it effective governance? Is it the fact that he bombed Pakistan? Is it that he has Hinduized society and almost finished off dissent from everybody else? So people are very afraid of even talking out or criticizing him by name. So is it within all this raising India's stature in the world? Now that is a abstract concept, and it can be argued that it has some effect, but it would be very difficult to separate the impact of this from all the others, and it would certainly be less of a important thing than the other factors that I have mentioned.
Hmm. Okay. Okay. So finally, whoever comes to power after the 2024 elections, what do you think that government should be doing going forward, particularly in the turbulent international waters?
No, sir, your biggest problem is our domestic agenda. The three E's: education, employment, environment. These are your biggest problem areas. Your education, your school education is pathetic. There's no teaching there's a tiny upper crust of the IITs and so on, which is world class. And beneath that very impressive upper crust, we are totally hollow and worm ridden underneath. So something desperately needs to be done on improving your school education. Second, as I said, is employment. Yes, in some sense, your employment data are improving a little recently. But the fact of the matter is that decent jobs that people want are just not available. In the city of Amroha, 16,000 jobs for the sweeper were announced, and they had 25,000 applications from people including PhDs. The railway is wanting to have, I think, 200,000 people. They had 25 million applications. There are entire cities like Kota which have set up coaching centers to try and get to government service. So, and they say there are no good jobs available. During elections, I travel in Uttar Pradesh. The word naukri or job is equated with government job because they say private sector is not creating jobs. So, and the worst thing is this, I said, no, do you have a job? He says, we can't afford it. Nowhere else in the world when you hear that, I can't afford a job, what does it mean? It means you have to give a bribe to get a government job. So if you have enough money, you get the government job, otherwise you don't get. So employment is a terrific problem. Environment. Sir, India now has 6 of the 10 most polluted cities in the world. You coming to Delhi, it's like breathing in smoke and fog. It's terrible. And it's not getting better, it's getting worse. Uh, our aquifers, by over pumping in Punjab, Haryana, we are destroying all our aquifers, and yet nobody dares stop free electricity. So you're destroying your dirty water continues to be the biggest single cause of death, rivaled with dirty air. And you can say all of Memami, Ganga, and all that stuff at the end of it all. Please do not drink water of the Ganga thinking it is Amrit. You are more likely to die. Maybe that is one way of getting to heaven quickly, but it's not the favored way for me. So
Is
these are very, very serious problems that the government should be focusing on, these three. And the fourth, which is not usually mentioned, is the police judicial system. If there's something goes wrong, can you get immediate attention from the police? No. Will you get justice from the judicial system? No. The case will continue for 25 years. So education, employment, environment, police judicial system. These are the huge deficient areas which the next government needs to focus on.